you, Mr. Chairman. It is really a great pleasure, and I am still grateful for that opportunity to deliver leaflets in those early market campaigns.
You mean you worked in his campaign office?
I as well.
And in Washington.
Yeah, and then you did get me to Washington, where it took me nearly a decade to escape. And I've now been at Yale 14 years. But in my time in Washington, I did have the fortune to work for an EPA that actually tried to do something. I had the privilege to be the chief negotiator of the Framework Convention on Climate Change for the EPA. And I think the issues that you put forward for us to think about today are ones that have sadly not made progress for a very long time. So I want to reflect on where we are and where we need to go. I think America stands at a watershed moment. I think we face a triple policy challenge that is almost unprecedented in its complexity and its urgency. As you've already made clear, all of you in fact who've spoken, the climate pressure on us is mounting, the greenhouse gases are building up, we cannot lay back. We have in fact spent too much time not addressing this issue for a good period, and we have to step up. And at the same moment, we face an energy crisis, real pressures on real people with $4 a gallon gasoline and the threat of heating oil at prices that is going to be hard to bear this winter. And I think that is a challenge that we have to take seriously. So we're going to need clever policy that responds both to the need to bring greenhouse gases down and to respond to the climate issues in the energy relationship. And frankly, there's a third piece to this, and that is our independence, our energy independence, and the economic consequences of shipping something above $650 billion a year overseas to pay our energy bill. Not to mention the geostrategic challenge of being reliant on the Middle East. I think all of us become frustrated with the situation in Iraq. I think even more generally that Middle East is an area that we understand is complicated. We don't do well there. And if we stay on a fossil fuel track, even if we were to get out of the Middle East, it means reliance on other places like Russia, and Kazakhstan, and Venezuela, and Nigeria. It's almost a laundry list of places we don't want the lifeblood of our economy dependent. So I think we are at a moment where the commitment to a clean energy future is critical. And this will present challenges, it will require sacrifice, but I also want to focus on the opportunities. This, as Congressman Larson made mention, is what I've spent a good bit of time researching. For more than 15 years, I've been arguing that the critical point of leverage for policy progress on the environment is the business world. So I think engaging the private sector in the search for solutions, and we've heard two great examples already today, is the critical challenge in front of us. And let me just identify 3 quick points in that regard. I think we have a revolution going on in business attitudes towards the environment. I want to talk about that. I think we have an opportunity for a policy rethink and a revolution in policy progress. And finally, I think the link to our economic future is really important to stress. In terms of the sea change in business attitudes, you couldn't have had a more beautiful demonstration of that than what we've heard already today. When I first got to Washington, almost every corporate leader talked about the environment as a burden, as a cost, as regulations to follow. What you've heard today is a whole new attitude, and frankly, while these are leading examples, there are hundreds, thousands of businesses and business leaders across the country that understand today there is an upside opportunity in responding to society's needs and engaging in the search for technology solutions. So I think we really do have a big opportunity in that regard. And you know, for all of you who've seen this, this is UTC, and it's all of what George David talked about and more. Just dozens of different interventions across the efficiency conservation platform, but also in terms of new technology and fuels. And the same thing is going on at GE, where John Rice and Jeff Immelt are investing in high-efficiency locomotives, jet engines, wind power, solar power, clean water. It is a full-bore spectrum of technology opportunities that they're pushing. I think the challenge then is to produce a policy revolution that supports this sea change in business attitudes. And that really requires us, I believe, to put innovation front and center in how we envision our policy structure. And we really focus on creating incentives that engage the private sector. So what's that mean? Number one, make polluters pay for the harms they cause. Fundamental principle. We talk about it, we don't do it. We often just simply set a standard to say if you bring emissions down to there, you're okay. I say no good. Make people pay for every bit of their emissions. And I think the first step is the climate change package that has a cap and trade program. But I say, let's get serious about it, auction all the permits, and let's move over time to a broader commitment to making polluters pay and having a price on every bit of harm that's caused. Second, if we really are serious about innovation, we've got to promote broad-scale innovation. We want to have a lot of money devoted to this sector, and we want to have a lot of players betting in diverse directions about what the future is going to require. And that, I think, requires more than just a cap-and-trade program in the climate change context. I believe we need a policy portfolio of incentives. And some of this, again, is already under debate. We need the green building standards. We need commitments to energy efficiency. We frankly need funding mechanisms to ensure that everyday people can bring some of these important conservation activities into their own homes. There's big challenges of both cost and inertia in getting us to retrofit all of America's houses to be the energy efficient places we need them to be. So I do think we have to have a portfolio approach with lots of different incentives. And I promise you, and these guys I think have already hinted at it, that at $125 a barrel for oil, every single company in America can do a lot to improve its efficiency, and every single one of us is underinvested in efficiency in our own homes. This is a huge challenge. We need to address it together. And finally, competitiveness. If we as a nation don't step up and push forward this clean energy future, others will do it. We saw just last week a huge effort being launched in Abu Dhabi to create a cluster around clean energy. GE is in fact involved. That cluster should be in Connecticut. We need to have the same level of commitment here to really pushing out technology innovation and our own commitment to a clean energy future. And I think it's absolutely the case that what Saudi Arabia is to oil, we in this country are to innovation and technology development. And it's a policy structure to support that I think we need to push for. And so let me close by saying that this is not just an environmental challenge, but of course it is. It's not just an energy challenge, and of course it is. I think it's a fundamental challenge to the future of our country and to our prosperity. And speaking as a former negotiator, it is not just important that the U.S. get on the game plan, which we haven't been for 8 years, but we have to lead the program. There are no examples of a successful response to a global environmental challenge, and frankly, we've never had one as big as climate change, but even smaller challenges. We have never succeeded where the U.S. is anything less but driving the bus. So we need to get ourselves in that front seat and really push out on this innovation model. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.